to find a way to answer back. I think it might be tough. I still think it'll be neck and neck, probably go at least 6 or 7 in this series. But I've got Indiana. I've just got a very good feeling. Home court is a huge difference maker for you. So the Pacers will be just fine up at home. The Tyrese Halliburton will still continue to show his stardom, and everybody else are going to prove to you why this roster from top to bottom is the reason it contributes to an NBA title. All right, so college football, like I said, we've been talking about it all from last week, and we're continuing to talk about it from this entire week. And so joining us, talking a little bit more about it from the college football season that's coming up, and not to mention what we've learned from the college basketball season this year. So joining us, Grayson Boone, Locked On Wolfpack. The ACC last year was a little interesting because we kind of got a mixture of a few teams. I know a lot of people, when I keep hearing about, oh, if Florida State didn't have this, they would have been up and in the playoffs. I'm like, look, it doesn't matter. If you got a key injury, you know that's going to be a difference maker. So we know that going into the season, there's a lot of competition up and in this. You got Clemson with Cade Klubnik. I honestly think, from what I saw from defense last season, Georgia Tech could be knocking on everybody's door. I mean, they got a very, very good defensive front I like, and the secondary, man, they can compete with that. So looking at NC State, and I loved watching Grayson McCall, even at his time at Coastal Carolina, now to be in NC State and his senior year. What's kind of the expectation going into this? Because I spoke with this with a lot of people in the college football realm, and especially now with no conference bids mattering for the top 4 teams in the college football playoff, it's anybody's ball game at this point, isn't it?
Man, I mean, the expectations for NC State this past season, they were basically as high as they've ever been in Raleigh. And for Dave Doeren now going into year 13, never accomplishing that 10-win meter. Last year with McCall at the quarterback position and all the offensive talent you brought in, like Hollywood Smothers and Justin Jolie, just to name a couple more names, NC State fans, and I mean myself included, we all believed in unison that maybe this would be the year. 2024 could be the year of the Wolf. And then you fall flat on your face. McCall gets injured with a concussion, has to medically retire from football as a whole. And then the season just kind of whittled away after that point, to finish with a 6-6 record after in the preseason, you're talking about potentially an ACC champion, potentially getting into the college football playoff. You really can't put into words how massive of a disappointment it was. And unfortunately, it's kind of bleeding in now to 2025. Not sure what to expect now. Dave Doeren goes into year 13, closes off spring football to the media. You have 2 new coordinators, both offensive and defensive. What should we expect from NC State in 2025? I also don't have the answer quite yet.
So looking at this schedule, because I think this is interesting, your first 6 games could be pretty interesting. You could kind of end up on, maybe you come away with either 1 or 2 losses in the middle of that, or you're lucky enough, you go through those 6-game slates, but then it tends to get harder. I mean, you got your Notre Dame, your Pittsburgh, and the Georgia Tech defense, and then, of course, you got now Carson Beck in Miami and Florida State that is hoping they turn the page after what happened last season. And, North Carolina now, where you got Chapel Bill now coaching up this team. That's got to be pretty interesting. So how do you think, like in the coaching perspective, looking at that specific schedule, because there's going to be a lot that they're going to have to really prepare for, because there's going to be some mixtures of some where you're going to get maybe 60-40 passing, and by the time you get in the tail end, it's all trench warfare at the end of it, right?
I tell you, kind of a feature of NC State teams in years past is a relatively slower start. You cannot afford that in 2025. I mean, your first 6 games, half of your schedule, you're not even leaving the state of North Carolina. The first true road test is in mid-October at Notre Dame. I mean, I guess we'll see what Notre Dame has this year. They lost, their quarterback, or maybe even their quarterback too, so we'll have to wait and see. But for NC State, the biggest focus is just 1 week at a time. Play the opponent in front of you. You cannot afford to look 3, 4, 5 weeks down the schedule, because then you'll slip up against a Wake Forest who doesn't have high expectations, or you slip up, on the road for the 3rd consecutive year against Duke. NC State hasn't been able to beat Duke here. And I mean, not to denigrate what they've done. They've become a decent program, but It's just constantly getting in our own way, it seems like, in the last handful of years. For NC State, you've got to come out the gates hot. You have to take advantage of playing East Carolina in Raleigh or Virginia, which is actually a non-conference game. It's weird. It's still in the ACC, but a non-conference game against Virginia at home. You have Virginia Tech at home. You have Campbell at home. The first 6 weeks of the season, it will make or break you. And that's even before you get into the tough opponents like Notre Dame, like Miami, like Chapel Hill there to close out the regular season. They should know what they have before October even rolls around.
Yeah, no, 100% I agree. So talking about that with Hollywood Smothers, because we know that the run game is going to be very important for NC State this upcoming season, especially when you got to be ready and be prepared with, a Notre Dame defense like that, and even a Georgia Tech defense that can stuff up the middle of the defensive front. So looking into that, because he's got some promise up and into him, what should we expect, at least from just his play skill? And could that be something on the rotation they really want to be able to control from the speed, elusiveness, and kind of throw in a little bit of power here for their run game?
You should expect Hollywood Smothers to be a lot more of a bell cow type back last year. It was in a little bit of a two-man rotation, possibly even a three-man rotation last season with Jordan Waters, and Kendrick Raphael. But this year, we saw it in flashes last year in 24. Every time that Hollywood Smothers is on the field, he's the most talented player on it. He has speed that no one else has. He has quickness and agility that no one else has. And he can score every single time he has the ball in his hands. And for NC State, you got to maximize a guy like that. You have to give him 20 to 25, if not more carries this year, depending on how you want to balance your air raid attack as well. Hollywood Smothers, when he gets the amount of usage that he should get, he's very easily a top 3 running back in the ACC. It will be up to the new offensive coordinator and Kurt Roper and the head coach and Dave Dorn to make sure that their top playmakers are getting the ball when they need to be getting the ball.
Yeah, 100%. Grayson McCall, I loved watching him in his time, in Coastal Carolina. And, I've always loved some of these quarterbacks that just come out of the schools you don't pay attention a whole lot to, because there's just so many of like these big namers. Like, obviously everybody's paying attention to Arch Manning in Texas. And then You're looking at what the quarterback position is going to look like for Ohio State and Oregon and Bama with now their new quarterbacks. But Grayson McCall, when I watched him, I thought he had a very accurate arm. I thought he was somebody that can fling the ball downfield and at least stretch it to where you got more yardage and more momentum to go and get 6 points right there up and off the bat. Last year didn't quite become the season that he wanted, but this season now kind of seems like there's some juice that's added up into here. What should we expect from Grayson McCall? Because to be honest with you, I love kind of that hidden gem that not a ton of people kind of watch, because I kind of felt the same way I did at one point when K. McNamara in Iowa, he was kind of coming up into his zone. But do we expect Grayson McCall to kind of fit that bill? And is he somebody worth looking into? If I'm an NFL scout and I'm needing a future franchise quarterback at some point, what are the tangibles he'll bring to the table this upcoming season?
Well, last year we had very high expectations. He was supposed to be the guy that maybe gets us to heights that we haven't seen under Dave Dorn. And, him suffering that injury against Wake Forest and ultimately leading to his medical retirement. Now it's CJ Bailey era in Raleigh. He was a freshman quarterback last year. He'll be taking over for us now his sophomore season in Raleigh. It was so tough to watch that go down for McCall, though, because to your point, he did have the accuracy that you would hope that any great college quarterback in the country would have. He goes through his reads. He is a great leader, a great program guy that anyone would be lucky to have. To watch what happened to him was a very bitter pill to swallow, but almost instantly you saw the emergence of CJ Bailey taking the reins, and with no time to kind of learn the system, just thrown into the fire. What he was able to do at the end of last season, I think in some senses, it's a disappointment regardless of how you look at it. In some senses, getting to 6 wins still with a freshman quarterback, some would say that's a smaller win. But what he put on tape, there's so much room for projectable growth. And I think that's a big thing you're going to see in 2025. His fearlessness to fling the ball downfield was not something you see all the time from a freshman quarterback. He is fearless, and he's only growing increasingly strong, increasingly agile. He's a 6'6" guy. He looked like a beanpole back there in the backfield last year. He's put on some healthy weight. He's, developed great relationships with his wide receiving core that they retained about 95% of. You only lost Kevin Concepcion to the portal. You brought back just about everyone else. If the offensive line can protect C.J. Bailey, I think he's in for a very good sophomore season.
All right. Definitely have to watch that this upcoming season. I'm excited for it, period. So moving on to the college basketball realm, we know that, NC State, they got busy. I mean, especially with, the transfer portal and a couple players that we know can be very impactful, and especially with the kid at Texas Tech. So we know that this team, what it seems to me is that they want to capitalize from what last season, what kind of ended up, especially with the top ranked teams. If you're up there in the middle of the ballparks of the top 15 to the 20s, that's something that you want to be able to kind of climb right up in and be able to compete in this, especially when you're going into the March Madness tournament. That's one of the more important things. But I think this team does have the makings to be perimeter attackers, for one, but then also trying to mix up some shooters, especially when you need some right there up on the arc. How do we kind of see this roster really shape up now with the transfer portal and what NC State, what they want to be able to focus on to really dance with some of these big boys that they weren't able to try to beat from last season?
Sometimes it depends on what ranking service you follow, whether it's 247 Sports or On3 or anyone else out there. By all accounts, it seems like NC State and Will Wade in just a couple months here has put together a top 15 roster in the country. And you mentioned Darian Williams coming over from Texas Tech. A lot of folks perceive him to be the number one returning player into college basketball. He went through the NBA draft process, decided to come back to school somewhere. He was in the portal. Will Wade being able to grab him was just the cherry on top to an already budding, very promising class with guys like Trey Holloman, the point guard from Michigan State, Terrence Arsenault, a guard that just played the national championship with Houston. There's so much untapped potential that I do think Will Wade has put together at least maybe a top 20, top 15 class we're looking at. When Will Wade stepped to the podium during his opening presser at NC State, he told everyone in attendance he wants NC State to be a top 4 team in the ACC this year and make it back to March Madness this year. He knows the passion that's just waiting with open arms in NC State's fan base. If everything comes together and he wins in year one, you could be looking at a established program to be a lot more consistent in the near future. It's been decades, and I mean decades, since NC State basketball has been relevant on a consistent basis outside of their miracle run to the Final Four in 2024. We're not trying to have that be an anomaly. We want to make it to the Elite Eight, the Sweet 16, win more ACC championship titles, possibly make more visits to the Final Four. With Will Wade, it seems like virtually anything is possible. Him being one of the top recruiters, not just in the ACC now, but in the country. I know he got fired back at LSU. Maybe he was ahead of NIL times back then. With everything legal now, there is no player that is safe from Will Wade in the portal. He can get whoever he wants, and NC State will be the benefit of that.
And it's funny you say that because I remember watching them up and in the past. It almost seemed like they were kind of along the lines with their defensive sets, almost nearly to like what Michigan State put together. But I did think NC State kind of had a little more of that offensive juice than what, Michigan State kind of needed in that point. But they had more of that stronger defense. So a mixture of both could really help out. But, kind of interesting about this because I've talked with a bunch of people when it came to the NIL and the transfer portal. I mean, to me, in football, it seems to work out so perfectly because there's such a strong relationship between college and the pros. And part of that is because we get a lot of these kids that get drafted and they're ready to be day one starters or they'll be contributors on this 53-man roster. Whereas in basketball, I mean, I'm starting to see it now because the NIL, it's now starting to affect for players to want to come back to college and come back and get more of the experience to be prepared for what the NBA has to offer. We know the draft is right around the corner, and we know that the big thing of it is Cooper Flagg potentially getting drafted to Dallas. So looking into that and kind of seeing the impact of what the NIL has, does this kind of give it more of the opportunity for a lot of these college teams? Because I'm going to see a lot of big brands like Duke and North Carolina and multiple others to really play their hand, but say even for an NC State where they really have to get ahead of the curve from it and take advantage of it while this, I would say this open playing field right now could be anybody's ball game, even in the tournament.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point. And when NC State made the decision to fire Kevin Keatts, and then Will Wade's name started floating out there a little bit shortly after that, NC State choosing to hire Will Wade, that was a conscious decision that they will be more competitive in the NIL space, in the transfer portal space, a bigger effort to chase more consistent success. For kind of, years to decades plus, NC State has been a little bit too conservative. They've been kind of resting on their laurels and kind of saying, well, the Blue Bloods, how are we able to, compete with them when they're putting together the top rosters and they have all the money? When Kevin Keatts was fired, NC State's NIL collective received hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of almost instantaneous donations. This fan base is more than ready to see a winner. And to your point, when you see Blue Bloods, I guess, kind of stumble in a sense that these other programs that are, I guess a second tier, they're starting to take advantage of this open landscape. Like you said, you might see a school like NC State almost return to the national prominence, despite like Kansas, for example. Kansas was having trouble getting some of the top players in the portal. Kansas, like we're talking about the Kansas, Bill Self at Kansas. How does a blue blood program like that have, trouble in the NIL space? Yeah. Here we are. It's a new world to navigate, but NC State picking Will Wade, that is the guy you want to be navigating this landscape.
Man, cannot wait for it. It should be interesting. Again, I'm the kind that, like college football, I want to be able to develop a relationship with these kids because I'm going to know them based upon the program they play for. And then by the time they get into the pros, I know them because I've watched them play. Even, and because of even with these brand names, it'll really help out their landscape and their market down the future. A fun question before letting you go. I thought this was really interesting. So, to me, my heart has always been set on the pros as far as being a Chargers fan. So, when it comes to an NC State alumni like Phillip Rivers, okay, he's a great man. Obviously, has built together his entire offense for his family. But I'm hearing a lot of buzzing noises involving his son, Gunnar Rivers. Now, we know that Texas is kind of playing they're kind of playing their hand while they even have Arch Manning, which they have such respects for the Manning family. But when looking at this, because I've watched some tape, Grayson, that kid can sling it. And I know that he's got the plethora from his father and then now kind of potentially getting ready to make his commitments at some point. Has NC State kind of been in the loop of this? I mean, even with, a former alumni like Phillip Rivers himself, have they kind of planted that seed and what that might potentially look like?
They're most certainly in the mix. They were actually Gunner's first offer, so they made sure that they were knocking on the door before any other schools were. And you had to do that as, your dad is the legacy player at NC State. You can't afford to let a kid like that kind of slip between your fingers. It will be interesting to see if NC State can pull off what would be the biggest recruit, ever. We're talking even bigger than his dad was way back in the late 90s. Gunnar Rivers is going to be one of the top quarterback recruits in the country when it's his time. I think he's a 2027 recruit. It's no surprise that you see Texas now involved. I think Auburn was another school that's going to be involved. I won't be surprised to see Alabama as well because that is his home state of Alabama. If NC State can land this, kind of in a similar sense of getting Will Wade as your head coach, that too, getting Gunnar Rivers to come to NC State, that will be a conscious choice that you are trying to be better than decades of what you have been. You are trying to attract the top level players, both in the state and out of the state. Hopefully in this case, it's a legacy player. If Gunnar Rivers comes to NC State, that will be the biggest recruit that NC State has ever landed. Point blank period. It would change everything for the Wolfpack program.
Oh, man. And if that becomes the case, and he honestly, if he gets up to that point where, let's say hypothetically he plays and he's breaking records of his dad's, his former records up from there, boy, wouldn't that just be a sweet, savory story for all NC?
Oh, man. Multiple tears which would be shed, I guarantee you.
Love it, man. Appreciate you for coming on by here, Grayson. Just to kind of tap in with all of our audiences here, where people can find all of your guys' content and getting locked in with the Wolfpack this upcoming season.
Yes, sir. So we are the Locked On Wolfpack podcast. I'm the host. My co-host is actually a former Wolfpack defensive tackle. His name is Kenton Gibbs. You can find us on YouTube, Locked On Wolfpack. You can find us on Twitter as well, capital L, capital O, _ Wolfpack. You can find us online there. That's basically our main two sites we run. I have my personal Twitter, which you can find me on there, Grayson Boone. Same for Kenton as well, Kenton Gibbs on Twitter. But yeah, anything NC State at any time. Typically, we're 5 days during the week. This is when basically school is in session. We're kind of in summer mode right now, just 3 days a week. But if school is in, so are we. We're talking NC State football, NC State basketball. I'm a baseball guy, so I like to sprinkle in a little Wolfpack baseball whenever I can. But Locked on Wolfpack is the podcast, NC State every single day.
I love that pitch. When school is in, so are you guys. Man.
That's right.
You guys are just getting deep up into it, man. Appreciate the content. Appreciate the collaboration here today, man. Enjoy the rest of the week, and we'll see you guys soon. And good luck to the up-and-coming season.
Appreciate you, Jake. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Man, well, there you go, man. I mean, hey, wouldn't that be something? Gunnar Rogers literally going to NC State and following in his footsteps of his dad, Philip. That would just be